Okay, this is a great example of how to factor a trinomial to make sure that your signs are correct. Okay, so let's look at this one right here. X squared minus 5x minus 6. It's a trinomial, 1, 2, 3, and the leading coefficient is 1. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go straight to my two binomials. And what you need to do is you need to figure out what goes in these 4 spots along with what your signs are going to be, okay? Pluses or minuses. So I know that the first two are going to give me x squared. And in this case, because it starts with a 1, it's going to be x and x, right? X times x is x squared. I know that the last two are going to multiply to give me a negative 6. So I list all my possibilities over here. What numbers are going to multiply to give me 6? Well, it's either going to be 1 and 6 or 2 and 3. Okay, no other possibilities. When my left column meets my right column, I'm done. Okay, now very important here. Look at the signs. This last sign is a minus, which means that I am going to subtract these to try to get a negative 5. I'm not adding, I am subtracting. Because this is a minus, I am subtracting. Now, if I subtract these two, 2 minus 3 or 3 minus 2, what am I going to get? I'm going to get a 1. 3 minus 2 is 1, or 2 minus 3 is a negative 1. So that's not 5. So it's very important. When you look at the 2 and the 3, you might say, oh, well, 2 and 3 give me 5, right? But in this case, I have to look at this sign, and I have to know that I'm subtracting to get that 5. Well, what about 1 minus 6, or 6 minus 1? 1 minus 6 gives me a negative 5, and 6 minus 1 gives me a positive 5. So in fact, I'm going to get a 1 and a 6. Now let's go and make sure our signs are correct. I have a 1 and a 6. I know that they're going to be different signs. It's either going to be minus 1 plus 6 or plus 1 minus 6. Now what's the way that I'm going to get a negative 5? Well, if I try a minus 1 plus 6, that's going to give me a positive 5, right? I have more positives than negatives. So what I need to do is I need to do a positive 1 minus 6. That gives me a negative 5. So in my two binomials, I'm going to have a plus 1 and a minus 6. And if you FOIL that out, you'll find out you get what you started with. Now, let's look at a very similar example. X squared minus 5x plus 6. Okay, here's the big difference. Plus, let me make it bold. It's different from when we did it in class, but that's the big difference. Now, when I go to factor this trinomial, it has a leading coefficient of 1. I'm going to go straight to my two binomials, and I'm going to try to figure out what gives me this trinomial by filling in these 4 green blanks. Now the first two come from here, right? This is the F part of my FOIL. So what two numbers multiply, or what two things multiply to give me x squared? It's going to be x and x. The L part of my FOIL is going to multiply to give me 6, right? So it's either 1 and 6 or 2 and 3. Now, in this case, because this is a plus, it means that both of my signs are the same. They're either both positive or they're both negative. And I look back here to find out that they're both negative. So this is going to have to be a minus and a minus. Now, is it 1 and 6 or is it 2 and 3? Well, let me list them here. 1 and 6 or 2 and 3. How can these both be negative and it's going to give me a minus 5? Well, It's either going to be a negative 1 and a negative 6, but if I add those together, that gives me a negative 7. That's not it. Or it's going to be a negative 2 and a negative 3. This is it. A negative 2 plus a negative 3 is a negative 5. So when I go to put my answer, I'm going to have a minus 2 and a minus 3. So the answer for this second trinomial, when I factor it, is x minus 2, x minus 3. Okay? And as always, you can FOIL this out to see that you get what you started with.